It's the Cloister Room, and welcome to it. I'm your host, Tom Dickinson, 2 eyes, no e's, and yeah, I know I'm a little bit late on this episode. I said I'd be doing weekly episodes every Wednesday, but this past week was just a tiny bit hectic for me, so I had to put it off a couple days. But I'm here now with a new episode, and so all is right with the world. Now, today's show is probably going to be a little bit shorter than last week's. I mean, last week's was, 18 minutes long, and really no one wants to listen to one guy just talk and talk for more than about 10 to 15 minutes, even if it is someone as witty, charming, and engaging as myself. So I'm going to try to make 15 minutes my new maximum, unless there should happen to come a day when I include someone else on the podcast in addition to myself, in which case I would probably break that rule. So for Act 1 of this week's podcast, in the interest of keeping things a little bit shorter, I've chosen a light and breezy topic, that is Doctor Who story titles. And then in Act 2, I'm going to once again talk about Lost and tackle the issue of whether or not this final season is providing us with any real answers. All that plus the Dune Quote of the Week and the Haiku Reviews. So, let's go. The Cloister Room with Tom Dickinson. Episode 008, Incursion of the Hyrule. Alright, here we go with Act 1. In case you haven't heard, the first 6 titles of the Stephen Moffat era of Doctor Who have been announced. And if you don't want to know what they are, then, I don't know, cover your ears for the next 10 seconds or something. The titles are The 11th Hour, The Beast Below, Victory of the Daleks, The Time of Angels, Flesh and Stone, and Vampires in Venice. Now, on the surface, there's nothing too remarkable about all these titles, and they don't seem to have anything in common, but what I noticed isn't any particular thing they have in common, but something they all lack, and it's something that titles from the Russell T Davies era also lack. And that is nonsense words. By nonsense words, I mean clearly science-fictional terms, names of planets, characters, or species that don't sound earthly but otherworldly. I'm talking about your Mandragora, your Zygon, your Kroll, your Sensorite, your Traken, your Peladon, your Macra. All of these things are clearly not Earth words, but are used in reference to something in the episode. And because of that, when you tune in and you see the title of the episode, you don't necessarily know what it's referring to. For instance, if you've never seen Frontios, then you don't know whether Frontios is a person or an alien or a planet or a disease or anything. It could be whatever. All you know is that it sounds science fiction-y. But there's not a single title in the Russell T Davies era of Doctor Who that has a nonsense word like this in it. With the possible exception of Attack of the Grask, which isn't really an episode per se. I mean, of course, you have references in titles to Daleks and Cybermen and even Sontarans and Ood, but all of those are characters that had been previously established, so the viewer, looking at the title, could be reasonably expected to recognize the name and know what it refers to. I think part of the reason that nonsense words never appeared in the titles during the Russell T Davies era is that the production team decided they didn't want to put in these terms that might be off-putting to people who weren't really that into science fiction. For instance, a title like Silence in the Library or The Fires of Pompeii tends to draw someone in, whereas Attack of the Fnarg might sort of repel people. Or at least a certain kind of person. But you know what? I don't think Doctor Who needs to worry about repelling that kind of person anymore. It's a huge mainstream success. The people who are going to watch Doctor Who are going to watch it regardless of what it's called. So I don't think Stephen Moffat really needs to live in fear anymore that he's going to alienate viewers by having a sort of traditional Doctor Who nonsense title. Like Flight of the Glorat, or Incursion of the Hyrule, or Escape from the Shinshil. I actually kind of like titles like that. I wouldn't want every story to be titled that way, but every so often, while it might be silly, it gives you the sense that the Doctor is going to show us something truly magnificent that we've never seen or heard of, and that's kind of what it's all about. So, Stephen Moffat, I implore you, bring back the nonsense. And so now, of course, it is time for the Dune Quote of the Week. Deep in the human unconscious is a pervasive need for a logical universe that makes sense. But the real universe is always one step beyond logic. From the sayings of Muad'Dib by the Princess Irulan. And on that note, I'm beginning to wonder whether or not we can really make sense of what's going on Lost. So now, of course, it's time for me to talk about Lost Season 6, and for those of you who would rather not hear anything about that, either because you don't care or because you just care too deeply, you may skip ahead to about the 9.5-minute mark, should do. But for all the rest of you, it's time for that cleverly named segment, Tom Says Some Stuff About Lost. So this week I'm talking about answers. People want answers. The viewers of Lost are all wondering what the answers are to all these questions that they've accumulated over the past 5.5 seasons. And now that Season 6 is in full swing, one of the biggest topics of discussion among Lost fans on the internet is the extent to which we're getting any answers at all, and what will and won't be answered by the end of the show. Now, personally for me, I don't really care all that much about getting a bulleted list of answers. I'm really more interested in the drama. The only answers that have mattered to me on Lost are what's going on with these characters' lives and what will become of them. So, any question on Lost matters only insofar as its answer can illuminate one or both of these questions. This means the pallet drop in Season 2 and the tattooed shark and the hurlybird might not be worth answering at all. But there are some questions in Lost that do seem to matter, such as the nature of the conflict between Jacob and the smoke monster. The reason this is worth answering is because it really does affect our characters quite a bit, after all. They've been manipulated their entire lives by Jacob or the monster or both, and right now, they have to make some pretty important choices about whose side they're on, if they're on anyone's side at all. And as far as this question is concerned, are we getting any answers about Jacob and the smoke monster? Well, we haven't gotten any real answers yet. For instance, we don't know what they are, who they are, where they come from, and we're not even entirely clear on what either of them wants, aside from the fact that Jacob seems to want to protect the island, and the monster seems to want to leave it. It's not really clear to us why these two aims are mutually incompatible. Why can't the monster just leave while Jacob sticks around and protects the island? It's something we don't know yet, but we have gotten developments. We know more than we did before about how they operate. We know a little bit more about why they hate each other, and we're starting to get some sort of idea of the plan they have in store for our main characters. Now, of course, more is going to be revealed in time, but probably not everything is going to be revealed. And how do I feel about that? Well, mostly, I'm just tired of hearing people whine about it on the internet. Everyone seems to be accusing Damon Lindelof and Carlton Cuse of copping out, or of being lazy, or of just throwing some questions aside because they're running out of time. And I think that's really not a fair accusation, considering we haven't even seen the end of the show. And I mean, of course they have time. If they wanted to, they could probably answer every question in 1 hour. It would suck, but they could probably do it, and they have considerably more than an hour left. They have more like, 8 or 9 hours, so there's definitely time for them to answer whatever questions they feel they need to answer to tell the story they're telling. So my position is, let's just wait and see. We'll have plenty of time to whine after we know what we're whining about, and believe me, whine we will. And that's all I have to say about Lost for now. So now, once again, it's time for the Haiku Review. Yes, the review segment in which I review some things in haiku form. Haiku being the Japanese form of poetry in which the first line is 5 syllables, the second line is 7 syllables, and the third line is once again 5 syllables. Alright, this week I am going to be reviewing music. Not the sort of thing you would usually hear covered in a Doctor Who podcast, but I do sort of build this podcast about being about Doctor Who, science fiction, fantasy, and even some other things. So here's a little bit of some other things with a couple of reviews of recent album releases. First up, Realism by the Magnetic Fields, an indie folk pop album released on None Such Records last month. Dark and gloomy folk with some fantastic lyrics. Great songwriting here. Next up, Plastic Beach by the virtual cartoon group The Gorillaz. It's an alternative hip-hop record released by the record label Parlophone. After 10 long years, you'd think this shtick would get old. Turns out, it hasn't. And finally, 117% by Alex Day on DFTBA Records. It's an electronic album about video games. Synthetic pop tunes, critiquing video games. Clever and catchy. And that's about it. I hope you check out one or more of those albums. I don't know how much weight the opinion of an inexperienced science fiction podcaster counts for when recommending music, but if it counts for anything, then I guess you'll probably be in for a treat. And that about wraps it up for this episode of The Cloister Room. If you have any feedback, send it to feedback@thecloisterroom.com or post a comment on the blog at thecloisterroom.com. This is Tom Dickinson, 2 Eyes, no E's, signing off. Thank you. You have been listening to The Cloister Room, a fan-made production made by Tom Dickinson, who makes no claim to be associated with ABC, BBC, CBC, or DBC, which I just googled, and it turns out DBC is the Detroit Boat Club. Man, maybe I should seek out an association with them. Boats are awesome. It almost doesn't matter that this joke is recycled, but hey, I'm going to run out of clever disclaimers to end this podcast with one of these days, so I guess you ought to get used to all these recycled jokes.